Hokie Hangover. Ricky. Week 1 preview time.
And we're doing it live. I'll write it. We'll do it live.
That's right, buddy. That's
Effing
right.
thing sucks.
That's right.
If you don't know where that's from, you got to catch up on your memeology.
Yeah, this is our first live show, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken, This has to be. This is it.
Yeah. So but before we jump in, and it stinks that Andrew's not here to kind of bask in this for a moment. This started we're in year 6.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yep.
This started as a pretty it kind of still is a low budget operation if we're being honest, but kind of I think the growth that we've had as a podcast is a lot of fun. To be able to do the first live show on YouTube, which is also a new avenue for us as we explore that and try and meet folks there, because Lord knows it's one of the most popular platforms out there. We're hoping that folks will be able to join in and have fun with us in the comments and things like that. Certainly not expecting a ton of people to jump in on night 1, but this has never been like an overnight success type deal. It's always been a slow burn, a slow build. So if you're watching after the fact, you're more than welcome. Oh, look who's here.
Oh, how we doing?
He made
He's here. He made it with the Michael Vick hat and all.
Wait for it.
Man is grinding with the Vick hat.
Oh, the entire thing was muted. How about that?
Hey, you're just in time. You've missed absolutely nothing, Andrew.
Yeah. You've missed
sound
nothing,
beautiful.
Andrew. You're good.
All right. Well, that's good to know.
That's good timing.
Yes.
We're live, by the way.
Oh, we're live. I was going to say, let's go get a beer or something like that. I'm going
It's
to
probably like,
that.
why is Ricky talking already?
I didn't even know my computer was muted. How long have you guys been on? My bad.
About a minute and a half.
Yeah, a minute and a half.
All right.
You've missed absolutely nothing. Ricky was talking about we were just talking about how this is the first time we're live, so here we are. What better time?
What a great story. The first time we were live.
First time we were live and
we were live.
up 2 minutes late.
To those of you who are watching right now that are judging me, don't. Because this podcast, no one knows what frickin' time it starts at. And not to blame the other people in the room, because they have, everyone's got a life and responsibilities. Notably, Mike has a child.
Yep.
But
a little thing called being a father.
Can't pump I can't pump a 9:30 start 12 hours in advance and then I show up 20 minutes late. But here I am. Here I am. It worked out.
It's all good.
Worked out.
It's all good. I'm gonna go grab that beer. More context to the listeners. Usually we talk for about 10 minutes before the podcast and 10 minutes afterwards. So this is very jarring to me. But you guys go ahead. I'll be back.
Grab your beer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's start here. The depth chart was released, which, I mean, I look at the depth chart and there's nothing there that really stood out to me as like, whoa, that's shocking.
Yeah.
But there are a few things I definitely want to talk about. I mean, number one, I know we were trending this direction. We talked about it on the last podcast. Laith Ganem is definitely the starter now at left guard, which I think this definitely gets Virginia Tech's 5 best offensive linemen on the field at once, right? Ganem, I know, had made a lot of headway in the spring, and then he was getting some hype in fall camp, and it seemed like he was primed to break through, and now you have an offensive line that goes Chaplin and Laith Ganem, Braylon Moore, Caden Moore, and now you have Parker Clements still holding down the right tackle spot. So I guess just y'all's thoughts on Ganem cracking the starting lineup. We knew it was trending this way, but just curious how you all feel about that and how the offensive line looks and is aligned heading into the opener.
Well, as I shared on X earlier today, I think it's generally a good idea or a good sign when you've got young players, especially someone like a redshirt freshman, that's able to beat out guys that have been in the program longer. I mean, Brody Meadows hasn't really done a ton in his career at Virginia Tech. He's only entering his third season. I kind of thought Montavious Cunningham was going to get a spot here on the line. It obviously didn't turn out that way. He could very well be their sixth guy in the sense that he can play 4 of the 5 spots. That would not surprise me whatsoever if he was kind of a swing type at Georgia State anyway. So I think it's a fine role for him, but I am intrigued and a little excited about Ganem being able to break in to the top 5 in his second year in the program after a redshirt season. I think it's a good sign. And, the same thing goes for Mose Phillips, who kind of had it up and down last year at safety. For him to be able to beat out somebody like Jalen Jones, I do think Jalen Jones will be a little bit better than he was last year. So I do think there's going to be some improvement there. But as far as Ganem goes, you're right. It has been trending in that direction. And the hope would have to be that this does get your top 5 guys on the field, even if Ganem, I think originally we all thought of him as a tackle, but here he is getting a start at guard.
Yeah, I mean, Ricky, like to your point there, and though it should seem basic, the idea that your young players are improving over time is a testament to the way human development works. And I mean, if it's not happening, it's usually a ding against the coaching staff, but 2 years, same offensive line coach, you're, I believe, highest rated recruit in the previous class, number 1, I think, or top 3 recruit in the state of West Virginia. At least don't have those numbers, in front of me, especially at a position like offensive line. It shouldn't be incredibly surprising to see him take a big step forward, right? And obviously there's multiple ways you can interpret it. I know that there's some of you out there right now probably thinking, wow, this is a real, almost indictment of Cunningham. Like maybe he wasn't ACC ready at all whatsoever. And right now, today, we don't know that. But the way I'm choosing to interpret it and the way I do believe it will shake out is with a year in the weight room, a higher ceiling prospect got closer to his ceiling. And a guy like Cunningham who needed to take a step forward, in order to play at this level, maybe didn't at the speed that, you might otherwise have hoped he could. But at the end of the day, Cunningham was still a starter, albeit at Georgia State, but that's still an FBS program. So to have that be your backup, to have Brody Meadows, who, to your point, Ricky, like maybe he hasn't come along like you thought he would, given his like high school recruiting rank or whatever, but he did play last year and not absolutely horrifically. And you have to assume he'll take a step forward. To have 2-3 guys rotational as your 6, 7, and 8 on the offensive line leaves you with far more margin for error. And you just got to hope that like iron is sharpening iron here, and that it was an extremely competitive camp, which by all indications it was. And that this is really one of the first clear-cut signs that we've seen. This is an improved offensive line. Because frankly, would it be more encouraging if Cunningham stepped in at a Georgia State as a guy who like was grading out as like a, between like 68 and 75 on like PFF, take those numbers as you will, but he wasn't by any means super dominant. If he stepped in and immediately started on our line, there was no question that he wasn't. Obviously you could pitch a story for that too, but I like this one a little bit better. Called the guys that we have in-house, the younger guys, the guys that are going to be around, for Ganem, potentially 3 more years. I like that continuity. I like the homegrown talent coming to the forefront, and I like what it shows for Virginia Tech right now.
The depth is huge, right? And I think when you bring in a transfer like Cunningham, and we've talked about this before, it's tough to bring in offensive line transfers in particular. Like teams try to do it, but it's not always like it's safe to say it's not always 100% hit rate, right? In many cases, you don't really know what you got on the offensive line until you bring them into your program and see, right? Number one, like in a lot of cases, these guys either haven't played a lot of football, or if you're getting a guy with multiple years of eligibility left, they at least haven't played at a high major, right? They haven't played at a Power 5 level or P4 level, I guess. And if they're coming from a group of 5 or they're coming from the FCS, it's not always like a perfect fit on the offensive line. But when you bring Cunningham in and, okay, he doesn't win the right tackle job out of camp, but when you have him break into the 2 deep and you have a guy in Parker Clements who, I mean, let's face it, has been much maligned, right, since he's been on the offensive line for Virginia Tech. I think it does speak a little bit to the depth that Virginia Tech is now developing behind Clements, right? They feel good enough to give Clements another shot, right? Hopefully that means he's improved. The flip side is, well, Cunningham couldn't overtake Clements, and if Clements doesn't look like he improved too much, then maybe Virginia Tech will have a right tackle issue all season, right? That's the flip side of it. So, we'll see. But I think, having Ganem in the in the starting lineup and then kind of bumping everybody over one spot. Bob Schick moves out of the starting lineup. He's now backing up Caden Moore at right guard. I do think that Virginia Tech is in a position here where, there is some depth being developed on this line. And, Johnny Garrett, who I know the staff's really high on, he's backing up Xavier Chaplin at left tackle. We'll see. I think if Cunningham and Clements both struggle, could we see Johnny Garrett bump over from left tackle to right tackle? Remains to be seen, right? But I think the tackle position in particular is one we knew we were going to have our eye on going into the year. And I think it's going to continue that way. And we'll, I don't think anything is too surprising on the 2 deep in that regard on the offensive line. But I think, again, entering the starting lineup is something that probably bodes well for Virginia Tech moving forward. I think the rest of the offense kind of seems like it's status quo. Now, I know Nick Gallo's a little banged up, which that's happened a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Over the course of his career, he's banged up. So he may not play against Vanderbilt. Brent Pry gave a resounding "we'll see" in the press conference today. We're recording here on Tuesday night. He's like, yeah, we'll see against Vanderbilt. But he is really high on Benji Gosnell. He said Benji Gosnell has had a great camp. Hard to believe that he's been in the program now 3 seasons. He's a redshirt sophomore. I know he's had his injuries, but he is going to have an opportunity to play a good bit. And if his high school film and how he's flashed in the past is any indication, he could potentially be a weapon on the offense for Virginia Tech that we haven't really even talked about all summer, because we've talked about all the receivers, talked about running back, obviously Kyron Drones, but we haven't talked about tight end too much. And I think we all just assumed that Nick Gallo would be the starter, right? He's coming back for, I think it's his 6th year at this point. I think we all assumed that Nick Gallo would be the starter there. But, I mean, Benji Gosnell, either by injury or otherwise, looks like he's going to be tight end 1 here. And I'm really intrigued to see what he's able to do.
Yeah, the one that stuck out to me that wasn't Ganem on offense was Turner Bradshaw falling out of the 2 deep at receiver.
Yeah.
And Taki Heath taking his spot. I don't know. I mean, personally, I've always thought that Xavier had some really shifty skills as a slot guy that is the kind of mold and the kind of athlete that you want in that spot on the field. To not see him, I think, is interesting. I still have a feeling he's going to play a fair amount this year, but to not see him listed on the 2 deep is rather intriguing, especially getting beat out by a second-year player.
Yeah, Mike, you touched on Gosnell there for a second, and, I don't have the direct quote right there in front of me, but Pry in the presser today talked about Gosnell as like a top 5 guy who took a step forward. We talk about ceiling. This is a guy that Virginia Tech was competing with Ohio State for out of high school. He was a 4-star guy. Obviously, injuries derailed him not only at the end of his high school career, but then going on to early in his college career, which is going to create a litany of question marks of whether potential could ever be reached. And those question marks are still there. But if that's not just coach speak, and, we don't see an or next to Gosnell, and it doesn't seem like there's a ton of worry about Gallo not being there. I mean, if that's a now 4th legitimate weapon the defenses are going to have to account for, if he's a guy that really did take a step forward, that adds a whole nother dynamic to Virginia Tech's offense. So as we go through these first few games, right, where I guess this will be a big theme of the next couple of preview podcasts, Virginia Tech's expected to win and win handily in all three of these games. What can we see that would make us feel better about the latter, roughly 2/3 of the season, and for Virginia Tech to ultimately reach their potential? I think that Benji Gosnell emerging at any level, even if it's against Vanderbilt, Marshall, and Old Dominion, throw that on tape, and it's just going to, for Rutgers, for Miami, and the rest of them, just give them another thing to worry about.
Well, I think, too, you look at last season when Virginia Tech was having all of their offensive success late in the year. It wasn't because of the tight end production at the tight end position, right? It's not like Virginia Tech was getting a ton out of there, right? And, I think we're in a position now where, Gosnell's been talked about so long as a guy that could, eventually step in and contribute, but he had guys in front of him, right? Daquan Wright, who transferred out of the program to Ole Miss. He was in front of him on the depth chart. When Nick Gallo was healthy, Gallo was in front of him on the depth chart. But now Wright's gone, and Gallo's still banged up. And Harrison St. Germain, who I know played a little bit last year, but I think it goes to show you, Gosnell's pretty highly thought of. If Gosnell, out of the three tight ends in the room now, has probably gotten the least amount of playing time, he's now starting, right? And I think it speaks to the enthusiasm that Brent Pry has for him. And we've heard about it for a while, right? We've heard about Gosnell being a guy that could potentially contribute at tight end. Virginia Tech's offense was rolling last year without Allie Jennings at receiver and without premier production at tight end. And going into last year, I think Virginia Tech felt pretty good about Daquan Wright, and obviously they were very high on the addition of Allie Jennings, and you basically didn't get much out of either one last year offensively. So I think you go into this year thinking, all right, maybe Gosnell does have an opportunity to make an impact, and I think this is a pretty high floor offense. I think the ceiling obviously is extraordinarily high if everybody's healthy. But I think that, Gosnell has an opportunity to help this offense reach a different level that we didn't necessarily see last year just because we hadn't seen the production out of the tight ends. So pretty excited about that.
I'll just say this, and this speaks to both the Gannon point and the Gosnell point. Don't let the last few years, whether that be the end of the Fuente era or, the success that Virginia Tech had late in the season last year, make you forget that historically Virginia Tech is a program that was built on development and a next man up mentality on that depth chart, right?
Yeah.
And in recent years, obviously, we've had the insertion of the guys who are the primary stars on the team. They're the guys that you think will be the stars again, coming from the transfer portal. Guys like Khalil Herbert stepping in, or even the fact that names like Isaiah Ford and Cam Phillips, Christian Darrisaw all stepped in as freshmen and were good immediately. That's not how most college football teams operate. Players come up through the system, they improve over time, so you shouldn't be surprised when, again, it's a nearly 365-day-a-year proposition for these players, that a year in the weight room, a year of learning the offense, a year of developing, physically as a human being, you're going to come along. Well, let's hope that there's more stories and like that, and as we eventually have to turn the page on a lot of these star players, I hope that we'll see more of that going into 2025 and beyond.
How we feeling defensively? I look up and down the lineup. I think not a ton of surprises. We'll talk about safeties in a second, right? But I think defensive line, we're seeing a Josh Fuga or Kelvin Gilliam, so that's encouraging. Kelvin Gilliam was one of those guys that Virginia Tech added, and I think we were all hoping that going into last offseason they would address the middle of the defense, right? They'd address defensive tackle, they'd address Mike linebacker. And the fact that we're seeing Fuga or Gilliam means Gilliam is probably going to play significant snaps. We know Aeneas Peebles is going to play a lot. We see a Wilfred Penne and or Kamari Copeland, right? So we knew Copeland was probably going to play as a transfer, but Penne is going to get some run there as well. I'm feeling good about the defensive line depth on the interior, and it sounds like Virginia Tech is going to be rolling much like they did last year, opposite of APR. It's going to be Cole Nelson or Keyshawn Burgos. We have an or there as well, so I think we're going to see both guys in there with that starting defensive line, so to speak. So, I mean, I guess if you're looking for an area of, I wouldn't say concern, but like an area I'm going to watch, it's going to be the defensive end position outside of APR, like who's on the other side and how are they playing? We've seen, I think some really good things out of Cole Nelson, and we've also seen some good things out of Keyshawn Burgos last year, but we haven't seen it, I would say, as consistently as we'd like. So, if I'm looking at an area to watch here over the first couple of games of the year, I think that would be it, opposite of APR, how we looking at defensive end.
Yeah, for me, I think it's all going to go back to the linebacker play. This was the main issue that plagued this defense last year. You've got a brand new Mike linebacker that you have to hope has had enough experience at this point and had enough expert tutelage under Rick Stockstill that he's going to be able to kind of ingrain himself in this defense and ingrain himself around the guys that are around him. Still not sure what you're going to get out of Jaden Keller. Rather surprised that Kelly Lawson has fallen out of a starting position. Keontae Jenkins, what's that?
I said they don't know where to play Lawson. They're bouncing him all over the place.
Yeah, it does seem like he does move a lot. Keontae Jenkins, I feel like when he's healthy, he's pretty steady. But for me, it's all going to go back to linebacker. Do they have the ability to play the run effectively? We saw that was the issue for them for most of last year. They really struggled in the run game, specifically on big plays. Can they plug the gaps effectively? Can they find a way to maintain that integrity? If they can, I think this defense has the chance to be quite good. I think they're going to be relatively good on the back end. They've got enough disruption up front, I think, to be okay. If they can get some average linebacker play, this defense can certainly be average and maybe even a little bit better. And if you pair that with what's expected to be a fairly potent offense, I think you're looking at a pretty good roster.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, positions like the defensive end opposite of APR, maybe that's the stuff that we need to watch these first three games for, right? Who can establish yourself against live competition elsewhere? Yeah. Because am I terribly worried about it? Do I feel like, that group is a huge liability for Virginia Tech? No. But they may be part of the weaker link. Ricky, to your point that you made earlier, and I think we've been making this point in the last couple podcasts, like, if Sam Brungfield is a stud,
it changes the game.
It changes the game. It changes the entire conversation here. And we just don't know at this point. You can feel good about it. You can feel good that he was named a captain. You can feel good that he's led the team in tackles, at every stop that he's been at every level. By all accounts, there's reason to be confident, right? But you want to see it on the field. Again, another thing to look for, both against Vanderbilt, against Marshall and Old Dominion. I think you'll get a better feeling about it against Rutgers. But that's the number one thing I'm looking at. As we joked about, when we talked about worst possible case scenarios the other day, I don't envision Aeneas Peebles forgetting how to play football.
Yeah. Sure hope not.
Can that guy step up to the next level? And right. I believe that he can and will, and it's just a conversation, in my mind at least, of whether he's ACC average or ACC above average, and that's going to make a monumental difference as we look to how the season projects.
You guys hit linebacker pretty well. I don't have too much to add. I think bouncing Kelly Lawson all over the place is problematic. They have no idea where to play him, and he's going to be a depth piece, and maybe he doesn't play quite as much as he did last year. I don't know. I mean, we'll see how Jaden Keller plays. Right now, Kelly Lawson is the backup to Jaden Keller at will, so we'll see.
As athletic as he is, I'd be interested to see if they find a way to get him involved in the pass rush.
I agree.
I don't know that he's a hand in the dirt guy, but if you're going to get exotic in some of your pressures, I think he's certainly athletic enough to be able to cause some havoc. I've always had questions about him in coverage, but he is a really good athlete.
He's the tallest guy in the two deep. It's 6'6". He's certainly capable. I'd find a way to get him on the field. He's athletic enough. We'll see there. We'll see. Brumfield's going to start at Mike. You mentioned Keontae Jenkins at star. Caleb Williams is going to back him up there. Or Caleb Williams, sorry. Caleb Woodson is going to back him up there. Cornerback, I'm feeling pretty good about, obviously, with the starters and Mansour Delane and Dorian Strong for obvious reasons. But to see the young guys on the two deep is really encouraging. Dante Lovett, a sophomore, obviously breaking in into the two deep. He was in the two deep for a good bit of the second half of last year. Thomas Williams, a redshirt freshman, backing up Dorian Strong, really encouraging. And then at safety, right, for Mose Phillips to win the starting safety job, right, and to have a freshman, he's a sophomore, by the way, and then to have Quentin Reddish, a true freshman, backing him up, and then to have Stroman and Jalen Jones, right, I think the experience that Mose Phillips got last year, the experience that Jalen Jones got last year, coupled with the fact that Jalen Stroman, for a whole litany of reasons, does not stay on the field. I think Jalen Jones is going to play a bit, so hopefully he's ready to go. Yeah, a lot. So hopefully he's ready to go. The guy who's really intriguing to me, especially if Mose Phillips maybe just doesn't play well, is Quentin Reddish, because everybody's talking about how physically he doesn't look like a freshman. He looks like he's ready to play right now, and I think him breaking into the two deep is probably evidence of that. That would be really interesting to see how many snaps he gets. And even if he's just backing up Mose Phillips, I think it's a pretty encouraging sign to have a true freshman in the two deep like that. I think the staff speaks really highly of him. If we're going to have concerns at safety, and our best safety is a Stroman brother, I think we're probably in decent shape, right? Yeah. Even though that's probably the one area we look at outside of Mike linebacker, where we're hoping Brumfield just basically does what he's always done, just in a step up in competition. I think this defense does have a chance to be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to development, right? Like, can Jalen Stroman get past, some of the targeting and otherwise issues that have kept him off the field? Mose Phillips, obviously, last year, playing as a true freshman, not a guy that was like super highly touted out of high school. Again, can we take a step forward? Jalen Jones, playing out of position. You'd hope that with another full year under his belt, again, not as much of a liability defensively. Reddish, I think, is interesting for all the points that you just made, Mike. I think looking at, at least following him a little bit, because he was a Charlotte area guy. With 247, I kind of follow this stuff and get to interview these kids. Thought he played very, very well in his senior season. Looked like he would be ready to play at Virginia Tech, which seems like it will come in handy at a position where, unlike so many other on the depth chart, there's just not a ton of depth. So still the position I'm most worried about on the defense. But again, you're kind of just hoping and praying there because, as we get into ACC play and later in the season, there's going to be quarterbacks who, if these guys are liabilities, you think Cam Moore can't take advantage of that? Think again. So, we really got to hope for the best here.
I got nothing else on the depth chart unless you guys got something.
No, let's talk Vandy.
Yeah, let's talk Vandy. They went 2-10 last year. They're the worst team in the SEC, but we're going to talk about them, right? A couple of intriguing pieces, right? Virginia Tech's a 2-touchdown favorite for a reason, but they do have some intriguing pieces. Their quarterback, Diego Pavia, he gives teams problems because he is a dual threat guy, transferred into Vanderbilt from New Mexico State.
Wasn't he CUSA Player of the Year?
He's a stud. Yeah, he threw for almost 3,000 yards last year, he had almost 1,000 yards rushing. He does a little bit of everything. He's super, super athletic. I think it was Sam Brumfield was talking about how good of a player he is. So he's very athletic. He's going to be hard to bring down. He's going to make some plays on Saturday that's going to make Virginia Tech's fans' hairs fall out, right? It's going to be one of those deals that just rip your hair out. But he's a really athletic player, and I think if you're looking for a recipe to any upset in college football, it's okay, how capable is your quarterback? Can he hurt you with his arm and with his legs, and can he make enough plays by himself to make things interesting? So if Virginia Tech's in a tight game in the fourth quarter on Saturday, I think Pavia is going to be probably a pretty significant reason why.
Yeah, I think for me, the interesting thing about Vanderbilt is I think Clark Lee is entering his, third or fourth season right now, and they have no idea what they are as a program. They're in the middle of retooling their entire offense, which apparently Jerry Kill is helping out with, for Tech fans that remember that name. Lee has taken over defensive coordinator duties, so now he's going to be calling defensive plays as well as being the head coach. I think they had 24 guys leave the program through the transfer portal this offseason, and then they brought in like another 20. This is a team that's really in flux. It seems like they really are craving some stability, and they just don't have it. As bad as this offense was, they lost like 3 of their top receivers from last year. This is a team that Mike brings up a good point. Like, Pavia's got a really good chance to cause some problems and be a pain in the ass. But what's around him? And I'm just not sure that there's much there. And I do think that Vanderbilt has the potential to be kind of that plucky underdog that can be a thorn in your side for 3.5 quarters. But correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it seems like Vanderbilt just doesn't have much to offer.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, Pavia was a good Conference USA quarterback. He could be pesky. He could scramble. That should come in handy. You hope that Virginia Tech, with all those tools that we talked about along the defensive front, should be able to win that battle. This isn't a team that was really going to be throwing much, deep downfield anyway. Or so you'd expect. Doug Bowman with 247, one of my co-hosts on the Inside the Tunnel podcast. He's been in a real sicko mode and been following like Vanderbilt media all offseason long. Their reporters are saying, like, at the open practices, they simply have not seen a deep downfield throw. Like, they haven't even attempted to do it yet. With the litany of new weapons and a new quarterback, and they're trying to do some new things offensively in their first game, it seems pretty ripe for the picking for Virginia Tech to really be able to take advantage here. I think that really, like, the only thing, outside of a massive amount of turnovers, fluky plays, is simply overconfidence. Like, I think Virginia Tech should be able to dominate in the trenches, or at least win in the trenches. They have the better quarterback. Our corners are better than their wide receivers, who apparently aren't going to be receiving the ball much anyway. I doubt that if you're not throwing on your own scout team, probably not going to be doing too much against Dorian Strong and Mansour Delane. Offensively, they just don't worry me too much. Again, what would make me less confident is if they're able to run 50 gut effectively or inside zone all game long. Right. That's the situation where even Virginia Tech could win. And, we're going to be having a 45-minute to an hour-long stomachache on this podcast come Sunday.
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't bode well. So that's what I'm watching. Because I'm sure the Vanderbilt people on their podcast, if those even exist, are talking about that as Vanderbilt's opportunity.
The running backs for at Vanderbilt were not very good last year, and they're not very good this year. The receiving core, they lost a bunch. So to Andrew's point about the fact that Doug Bowman is hearing that they don't really have a downfield passing game, I think that would align to the fact that they're probably not too confident in what they have coming back at receiver, because it lost a bunch of transfers and several of them were out of that wide receiving core. They do have several offensive linemen coming back off of last year's team. That offensive line was not very good, but you do bring some production back there. If Virginia Tech's defensive line wins that battle in the trenches, I don't know what Pavia. I mean, it's going to be a one-man show for Pavia. I don't know what he does. So, yeah, that's something to watch. I mean, if Virginia Tech handles the interior run, like the interior inside run, inside zone game effectively, then I think Vanderbilt will probably have a really hard time moving the ball, it sounds like. And I mean, this is a situation where Virginia Tech's bringing back everybody on defense, right? And they add in difference makers, we feel like, on the interior defensive line and Mike linebacker. This is a game that where you can't get blown off the ball here, right? I mean, we're trying to make the case for Vanderbilt making this game competitive, and I guess the case would be they return like 8 starters on defense. But again, that defense wasn't very good. Mm-hmm. And the strength of Virginia Tech's team is on offense. I mean, shooting it straight, this might be the worst non-conference team on Virginia Tech's schedule. And I'm serious.
They play Old Dominion.
I'm serious.
Don't forget that.
I'm serious. Get Old Dominion and Vandy on a neutral field, and let's see them battle it out. That would be some sick shit. If you're taking that one in. But
I mean, if you got sickos watching Hawaii and Delaware State on week 0 at midnight Eastern, somebody will watch that game.
I'm known to fire at the window on some obscure games. I did not stay up for that. I didn't even attempt to. No, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah, Joey and I recorded our ACC pod late, and I asked him, "Hey, man, you watching this Hawaii game?" He goes, "Absolutely the fuck not," I think was the exact sentence he used. So, yeah, no, not watching that. We'll get into the actual game picks in a second. I don't have a ton here. This is a game.
There simply isn't a ton.
There's not.
They have a bunch of unproven or new players. That's the gist of it.
I mean, they're not like committing to Pavia as a starter publicly, but it sounds like that's the direction that this is going.
Tells you everything you need to know.
Nate Johnson is the other guy that has been considered for this job. He's a Utah transfer. Apparently, they're really only going to consider him in run-only situations. So this is Vanderbilt football. Clarkley has not been able to get the ball rolling in Vandy. Virginia Tech should win this game pretty handily. I do want to mention one thing before we get to the picks. Some has been made, and I think rightfully so, about this game being played on turf in late August. Thank God that this game is being played on Saturday and not tomorrow. Would you guys like to know what the temperature tomorrow is in Nashville?
Dude, if it's anything like the DC metro area tomorrow, it's going to be very, very hot. Yeah.
Which is just absurd. And then Thursday, it's 101. Saturday, it's supposed to get down to 90, a very brisk 90 degrees. Virginia Tech's apparently been practicing at least once or twice on the Marching Virginians practice field to try and get the feeling for playing on turf in hot conditions. Hopefully Tech's ready. I'm just going to say that. I do think there is going to be something to be said about the conditioning being tested. Guys who didn't put their work in January are going to feel it come Saturday.
Always the case in the opener, but especially when you're playing in an environment where it's that hot. So I think it's a really good point. Really good point.
Someone, at least one person, is confident for Vanderbilt. I'm seeing on my Twitter feed right now. Someone by the name of Jalen Merricks. Self-described in his bio as Nashville, Tennessee, Vandy fan, serial optimist. Seems like it here. He says, to all my doubters, bookmark this tweet. If Vanderbilt loses this weekend, I will delete my account. That's how confident I am in my Vanderbilt Commodores. I am 100% serious. Should have brought this guy on the pod to state his case.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, at least he could have talked a bit more about Vanderbilt than us.
That might have been our most listened to pod of all time.
Oh, yeah?
Maybe. You think? No?
Most listened to pod of all time? I don't know. When the end of the Fuente era, when our negativity was like the voice in people's head confirmed.
Dark times.
Yeah. A lot of people listened back then, but more people are listening now than ever, which is important to know. So thank you to all of our new listeners.
You know, it's funny how that works. Like, if the team's really good, a lot of fans are interested. If the team's kind of good, they're okay. People don't care. If the team really sucks, people are really, really interested. Funny how that works.
Mm-hmm.
You guys ready to get to some picks?
We do some of our best work. Yeah, I am, but we do some of our best work when the team is really bad. So
yeah, I think
not that I'm openly rooting for that. I would never do that. I'm an alum.
Yes, unfortunately, that's just in the
hope not
5 previous seasons that we've done this podcast. Been a whole lot more good than bad, and even in the seasons that were good, there was concentrated bad.
Yes, I would say that's fair. ACC picks. Andrew, are you keeping track of these for the season? Are we going to have you do that?
Remember, I don't know how to use Microsoft Excel, so Scott's doing that. Producer Scott.
Oh, true. Okay. Well, Scott will keep track. I'll add that to his list of things.
Have a podcast that's just an Excel refresher for the 3 of us.
Yeah. We'll add that to the list of things I pay Scott for. Okay, moving on. Thursday night, we got 3 ACC games.
Wow.
NC State is a 33-point favorite against Western Carolina. Sorry, Catamounts. Give me the Wolfpack.
I know very little about the Catamounts other than Virginia Tech brought them to Lane Stadium several years ago. I don't know what 33. I don't know if that number's any good, but sure, give me the Wolfpack.
It's a big game in the state where I currently reside.
Monster game.
Give me
People are talking about it in barbershops and Publix across the state.
I'll take Western Carolina to go against you guys.
Do you guys have Publix in North Carolina?
Oh, yeah, we got Publix, dude. We got Publix and Harris Teeter.
I love me some Harris Teeter. We're getting our first Publix in Virginia Beach here in the next couple months.
Well, prepare to spend more.
We're getting one right down the street from me.
We're gonna have several Harris Teeters, a Publix, and a Wegmans, all in one city.
Living the dream, Rick.
Yeah,
we love that. Wake Forest, North Carolina A&T. Is there any way you want to be bold here? Or are we gonna?
I don't even know what the number is, but
I don't either. It's
the Fighting Dave Clawson should win this game comfortably. We'll call it that.
One of their few wins on the schedule. Andrew?
Ouch.
We'll ignore that game entirely.
Okay, sounds good. The game of the night is North Carolina, Minnesota. Carolina is a 2-point road favorite, 8:00 on Fox. I'm going to be honest with you. This is a really tricky spot for Carolina, and a game that hopefully they're able to establish the run early.
Fade them.
And give their quarterback Max Brosmer. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Minnesota's quarterback. That's Max Brosmer on the Carolina side. It's going to be Max Johnson, the transfer from LSU. So name that Max. Give me. We think it's going to be Max Johnson. Mac Brown hasn't named a starter yet officially. We think it's going to be Max Johnson, so we'll just go in thinking that's going to be the case. Hopefully, Amari Hampton gives him an opportunity to get settled in a little bit. Otherwise, man, this Minnesota team, it's going to be very interesting. They have a feisty defense, and they have an offense that we know very, very little about. So, give me Carolina in a very close game here.
Nope. Row the boat, boys.
Row the boat. Fair enough. Andrew?
So Carolina in a really close game. I mean, is that covering?
That's covering, man.
Spread.
2-point
I'll
spread.
take
Yeah, we're going to
Minnesota.
cover.
I think the era of good feelings is over for Mac Brown in Carolina.
Yes,
and
it is.
Though I do have respect for Amari and Hampton, who I don't think is talked about enough, primarily because I mostly talk to Virginia Tech fans, and we're not playing them this year. But, he's real solid, but I'll take Minnesota.
Fair enough. Duke, Elon. 7:30 on Friday. ACC Network. Give me Duke.
I will take Duke as well.
Yeah, I don't know what the spread is, but just give me the Blue Devils to win comfortably.
More interesting game. We got a little Pac-12 after dark action.
Oh, God. I'm so mad I have to pick Stanford games this year.
Stanford is hosting TCU at 10:30 Eastern Time on ESPN. And, guys, full disclosure, I will be watching this.
I feel like we kind of have to.
I will be watching.
As Tech fans, we're going to have to watch this game.
I will be watching. Stanford is a 9.5. As we sit here recording Tuesday night, Stanford is a 9.5-point underdog to TCU. Give me Stanford to cover here, but I like TCU to win.
I'll take TCU.
Okay.
I will take TCU to win and cover.
Fair. Saturday, noon Eastern, same time we're playing. Number 14 Clemson going on the road. Well, it's
sort of.
I mean, it's pretty much a road game. Clemson's like an hour and a half from Atlanta, but that's going to be all Georgia fans. It's at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium there in Atlanta. Georgia is a 13.5-point favorite. The total is 48.5. I'm much more interested in that total than I am the game spread. Here's the thing. Cade Klubnik is going to have to actually show that he can make some throws, which he hasn't done really at all. If Clemson doesn't have to win this game for it to be like an optimistic opener, like if Klubnik comes out and plays well and they still lose to Georgia, I don't think the story coming out of the game is like, oh my God, Clemson lost. The story coming out of the game would be, oh, Klubnik looked good.
Playoff.
Klubnik looked good. They could win the ACC sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
They could make the playoff. So that's what I'm going to be watching. Give me Georgia to win by like 14-17 because I don't think Clemson gets blown out here because I think their defense is too good. And I think Georgia, the way they play offense, I don't think this is going to be like a real explosive offensive attack, just with the way Carson Beck manages the game and stuff like that. I am really interested to see how Klubnik plays, though. But I got to see it to believe it. So give me Georgia.
As long as Georgia can drive safely to the game, which is questionable, I think the dogs will cover the spread here. So give me Georgia.
Georgia wins. Georgia covers. I don't think the game is competitive for more than a quarter.
Oh, okay. Speaking of games not competitive for more than a quarter, Louisville is playing Austin Peay at noon on ACC Network. So you can get in for $11.
Is Tyler Shuck going to Shuck? That is the question for the card.
Is he going to Shuck?
I don't know what the spread is, but I think Louisville gets off on the right foot here and wins pretty easily at home.
We have a lot to learn about Louisville, and I don't think we'll learn it against Austin Peay.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that's fair. We're going to learn about Pittsburgh when they play Kent State as a 24.5-point favorite on noon on ESPNU.
I think when Kent State covers, the negativity surrounding the Pittsburgh program will increase. So give me Kent State.
I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to pick Kent State to cover the spread here.
Clean sweep. Kent State to cover. Pitt comfortably, but Kent State
24.5, I think, is a lot of points for Pitt in that offense.
Ton of points. 3:30 ABC. I'm excited about this one. Number 19 Miami heading to the Swamp to play Florida. Guys, this is a huge game for both teams. Like,
it is. Yeah.
It's a huge game for both head coaches. It's a must-win for both. It's like really a must-win for Florida because their schedule is yikers, and this would really buy Billy Napier some goodwill. I like Miami. Give me Miami. I believe it. Florida's got talent. So does Miami, and Miami's got the better quarterback in my opinion. I think Cam Ward's better than Graham Mertz. Give me the Canes. Win and cover on the road in the Swamp.
Tap the sign. You're going to make me tap the sign. Fade the Canes until they prove it. We do this every year, Mike. We do this every year where people blow up the Canes. They got a hotshot quarterback. They got X person on whatever side of the ball that's going to make them elite. Florida's going to win this game.
I'm a big Cam Ward guy. If Virginia Tech had gotten Cam Ward out of the portal, I guess that would have been the Grant Wells class. I would have been yelling from the rafters and that was when he was at whatever his first step. Incarnate Word. There you go. Good memory there, Rick.
Yeah.
I think he's a game changer. I think that Florida has a long ways to go, and I don't think they're going to give their head coach enough time to do it. But to your point, Mike, for Miami, if they have college football playoff aspirations, this is a game that they have to win. Right?
Mike, I'll make you a deal. If Miami walks into the Swamp and wins by 2 scores, I'll start to believe in the hype a little bit.
Yeah, 2 scores is a good qualifier.
If they go in there and win by 4, I'm not gonna be like, yeah, I'll give them a golf clap, but I'm not gonna all of a sudden buy the hype.
Well, then, Rick, when are you gonna buy the hype? Because
they got to win more than one damn game against a team that might win 5 games this year. I know that Florida's schedule is really tough.
Their toughest games after that are Tech in Week 5, Florida State and again, this is their week, whatever. I'm not going to look where their bye is. They play Florida State at home in Week 9. They played Georgia Tech. Other than that, it's Cal, Louisville, Duke, Wake Forest, Syracuse.
The way that they've been hyped up this year, I think they've got to be in the top 15 for at least the first half of the year for me to really buy into what everyone's been telling me about Miami this year.
If they beat Florida and beat Tech, they will certainly be in the top 15.
Yes, they would.
So we shall
absolutely
see. If they can walk into Florida, and as you know, I still think Florida's a decent team. I know their schedule is absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
If they can walk into Florida, win that game, especially if they win it by 10 or more, they beat Virginia Tech, and I think that all of a sudden shows, okay, Miami's at least a pretty good team, maybe not elite, but they're at least pretty good. Then we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But we go through this every single year, every August, about everyone wants to hype up Miami, and you're going to have to prove it to me.
Fair enough. Ohio traveling to Syracuse, 3:30 ACC Network. Syracuse 17.5 point favorite. It's a lot of points.
It is a lot, but it's at home. Give me the orange.
Give me the Ohio Bobcats to cover. Syracuse wins.
If Joey's listening to this, I cannot be held responsible for anything that's coming out of my mouth when we preview all these games here in like 15 or 20 minutes. Give me Syracuse. UC Davis traveling to Cal.
Oh, God.
Cal's a 20.5 point favorite. Give me the Bears.
I do not. I just got to put this on record. I'm very irritated that we have to pick a game.
Give me the Golden Bears.
2 teams that reside in the Pacific time zone.
All Coast Conference.
Ridiculous. Andrew. Give me Cal, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess you didn't give your pick. Sorry. Andrew.
I've been looking forward to the opportunity to talk about this game all week. In what could be described as a roller coaster of a season for the UC Davis Aggies last year. They really came out and proved something to the Big Sky Conference. Cal, on the other hand, not so much. I'll take UC Davis to cover.
Jesus.
Better you than me. Richmond traveling to UVA, 6 p.m. ESPN Plus in Charlottesville. The Fighting Anthony Calandrias win in cover here. The Fighting Calandrias. He was named the starter this week. Give me UVA. UVA Cruz is here.
Andrew, go ahead. I don't know yet.
I've heard that times are tough for the University of Richmond football program, so I will take UVA.
Give me the Who's.
Georgia State traveling to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech coming off of a gigantic win, 21-point favorite. Give me Georgia State here, dude. Are you kidding me? This is right. This is ripe for a couple of really dumb Haynes King plays. Give me Georgia State to cover. Tech probably wins by like 14, but give me Georgia State here.
I think that's a pretty reasonable mindset. My knowledge of Georgia State is minimal, but
they're bad, dude. They're bad. This is a Georgia Tech thing, not a Georgia State
thing.
Well,
in that case, give me the Jackets.
Yeah, they're bad, dude.
I am reluctantly believing in the Jackets right now as a game that Virginia Tech certainly needs to circle on their calendar, but I don't think they'll have much of a problem with Georgia State. So, give me the Jackets.
SMU, they screwed around with Nevada. They won. They play Houston Christian. They're going to win this game by 1 million. Can we skip it?
Yeah, it's so funny that when these religious schools play each other.
Well, yeah.
Just funny.
Yeah, we can.
But yeah, I don't think anyone is impressed with the Ponies after week 0. Nothing about that game looked good. Not even the comeback.
We can call Southern Methodist a religious school if we want to. That's fine. Boston College, Florida State, 7:30 Eastern, ESPN, Monday night. The Noles bounce back here, 15.5-point favorites. Florida State bounces back.
If this game were at BC, I would feel a lot differently. But I agree, Mike.
Yeah, man, I don't see Castellanos doing what Haynes King just did. No way. Give me Florida
Noted
State.
Thomas Castellanos hater, Mike McDaniel.
That's me.
Pardon me, but didn't Thomas Castellanos go for 305 passing yards and 95 rushing yards
in a
last
very
year?
fluky game? In a very, very fluky game. Yes, he did.
Innocent. I mean,
sounded more like a hater every day, Mike.
I know.
I will give us the clean sweep there.
Yeah. Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt. Hokies 13-point favorite. Guys, I'll make this really easy. Virginia Tech's going to start the year 1-0. Give me the Hokies to win and cover here. I wish I could give you more analysis. I simply can't. They're the much better team. They need to cover.
Yeah, the 13 number I think is a really good number from the Vegas side in the sense of I can see this going one of two ways. Virginia Tech stumbles early on, keeps Vanderbilt around in the game for the first half, and next thing you know, we're in a 10-point game in the fourth quarter. And I could also see Virginia Tech kind of boat race Vanderbilt and send them out of the stadium. I'll take Tech to be able to cover this. I don't think they're going to cover it by much. I do think that Vanderbilt will look moderately competitive for at least a part of this game. Pavia's got that. It sounds like he's got that it factor, which is the ability just to screw with people. I think it's going to be a bit of an issue for Tech, but I think ultimately Virginia Tech will win this comfortably. They'll get their blowout win to start, and we'll be off to a good start for the season.
Hey, Andrew, before you chime in, Ricky said Vanderbilt will look moderately competitive for about a quarter. Buddy, hang the banner. hang the banner.
Oh,
hang the banner, Commodores. Hang the banner.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I'm pretty confident in Tech in this one. Nothing I have seen out of Vanderbilt that I've heard out of Vanderbilt would suggest that they should compete in this game. Again, maybe we're all drinking the Kool-Aid, and maybe we'll come back
Could be
in a few days and have a lot to answer for.
I don't want to have
a notoriously conservative podcast. But in this one, I would be comfortable moving the spread certainly to 21 and betting on it. I do have money on minus 27.5. Virginia.
Oh, you're disgusting.
Wow,
that's so gross. That is so gross. Well, we'll talk about the odds on that.
Beat them on a neutral field. So.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I said it would be a competitive game on neutral field that I might bet on. That's what I said.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Mike's wife's like, it's your son's birthday. She's like, it's Old Dominion versus Vanderbilt on a neutral field. Mrs. McDaniel, I'm not going to say your wife's name on the internet, but come on.
Sorry, honey, you have to sell the house.
It's a shame we can't get that matchup in a bowl game.
God, we'd be there.
Yeah. That's our next standing declaration. If that game ever happens, no matter how old we are, we're all still alive,
have to go.
We have to go.
Old Dominion, Vanderbilt.
Old Dominion.
Battle of the Ages.
Mark your
We'll
calendars.
be sitting in the handicap section, putting our teeth in. We told you back in 2024.
The ghost of Clark Lee will be haunting us. But either way, Tech to cover, Tech to win, Tech to play Marshall at home. 1-0 next week. Very excited for it.
Like it. Clean sweep 1-0, clean sweep cover. We all like the Hokies. We'll talk about it Sunday. Thanks for listening, guys. Got anything before we
Thanks
wrap?
for the folks that joined us on YouTube Live. Appreciate it. Make sure you're sharing the podcast with all your buddies as we get the season started. We had a lot of growth last year. Looking forward to another one this year. And, I'm glad we can actually talk about real football next time.
Yeah,
Andrew,
I will be.
Take us out, Andrew. Take us out, too, while you're at it.
In the midst of a wedding I will be attending on Saturday, I will be watching Stony Brook versus Marshall. So we have some more real football insights in our next preview. Until then, my friends, go Hokies.